All right, time now for a look at the day's business news. Stephen Carroll joining us in the studio. Good morning to you, Stephen.
Hi, Will.
You've been looking at reactions to Italy's budget battle with the EU.
With this unprecedented step by the European Union to reject Italy's budget already causing some ripples on the markets, we saw Italy's cost of borrowing rise after the news came from Brussels that that budget had been rejected. Now, Italy's 10-year bond yield just under 3.6%. That's the benchmark borrowing costs that we look at when we look at what Italy would be able to borrow at on the markets. This is how it's been creeping up since the start of the year. You can see a spike when the government was formed in May there and creeping up a little bit higher as we got closer to this budget standoff with the European Union. This 10-year bond yield now at a level not seen since 2014. The other measure that we watch on the markets is the difference between Italy's borrowing costs and Germany's borrowing costs. That too getting close to what's considered dangerous levels. Now, the reason we worry so much about Italy's borrowing costs is because of how much debt the country has. This is, as you can see, not a new problem. It goes back a long time that Italy had a heavy debt load, but it has been made worse by the financial crisis. 100% of GDP in 2008, but in 2017 it was 132%. That means that it's worth more than what the whole economy produces in a single year. It's also the second highest debt level in the eurozone after Greece. And that's why reducing it is such a priority for the EU.
Reducing this mountain of debt has to be a strategic priority for Italy. A country that can't do anything about its debt is a country that's becoming weaker and cannot conduct public policies in the interest of its citizens.
Now, Italian banks hold large amounts of this government debt, so they're vulnerable too to market fluctuations. The ratings agency Moody's on Tuesday downgraded its credit rating for a host of Italian banks and companies, including UniCredit and Intesa Sanpaolo. The ratings agency noting that lenders were at risk from political events, but also that they had reduced the amount of problem loans on their books. Let's turn next to a look at the stock markets. European shares opening the day up, somewhat of a bounce back from the huge losses we saw yesterday. There's the FTSE MIB in Milan up by almost 2/3%. So a stabilisation in shares. Oil and gas companies still seeing some falls, though. That's after a slump in the oil price in US trading yesterday. And in London, shares in the British bank Barclays up around 2% after their latest results. Over in Asia, of course, we'd seen huge falls in trading yesterday. Things are looking a little bit more steady today. The Shanghai Composite even registering some gains. Bit of a seesaw day in the Asian markets. We'd started in the red, but finishing up somewhat close to the flat line for those markets. And on the currency markets, a euro trading for just under $1.15, as well as 88 pence sterling. Next to a set of mixed results from Germany's biggest lender, Deutsche Bank. Pre-tax profits at the lender slumped by almost half in the third quarter compared to the same period last year. The figure of €506 million was actually better than had been expected, though. Between July and September, revenue at Deutsche's corporate and investment bank fell by 13%. Now, Deutsche says it's on track to meet cost-cutting targets for this year, including 2,800 job cuts. The bank has been struggling in recent years with weak earnings and legal costs. Deutsche shares opening down around 1.3% in Frankfurt. Now, there are over 2 million people in France with a wealth of more than $1 million, according to Credit Suisse. It's a number that's increased significantly this year and is in part thanks to government policies. Nadia Massi explains.
With more and more members, the number of millionaires in France has now topped 2.1 million people. That's 257,000 more than last year. One reason for the jump, the rise in the price of real estate. From Parisian apartments to opulent mansions, the estates of these millionaires continues to grow. Business and financial investments are also doing well, but another factor may be government policy. Specifically revisions to the wealth tax this year so that it applies to property only.
From the start of their term in office, this government has favoured large financial estates because of the reform on wealth tax. The richer you are, the bigger your estate is, so the easier it is to make yourself wealthier.
The number of super wealthy in France may be growing fast, but the US is still firmly ahead, with more millionaires than anywhere else in the world. The United States is followed by China, Japan, the UK and Germany, with France in 6th position. According to the report by Credit Suisse, by 2023, the number of millionaires in France is expected to increase by some 40%, or to just over 3 million people.
Finally for me, Starbucks has opened its first sign language cafe in the US state of Washington. All of the staff communicate with customers via sign language. Rather than baristas calling out your name when your drink is ready, your name appears on a big screen in the cafe. Starbucks staff saying that customers of all hearing abilities are embracing the environment.
Well, if you see, we are very busy today. It's been overwhelmingly positive. We've gotten rave reviews. The customers, even those with a little bit of resistance, come in, and once they have this experience, they become our allies and are explaining to other customers how exactly to order. So both the deaf, hard of hearing community as well as the non-signing community has embraced it.
Well, now, one of the things they do in this cafe is they have a sign of the week. This week's sign of the week is coffee, which is like this in sign language.
I wonder what the sign is for overpriced. All right, thank you,
I wouldn't know.
Stephen Carroll with a roundup of the business news. Time to